Hello beautiful friends, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. As always, big respect to begin with to Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nations. I'm speaking to you from their lands which are stolen and unceded, and I pay my huge respect to their elders past, present and emerging, and to all First Nations people who are listening in today, and to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. The cosmos is so huge. There is no way that any one person can possibly put a full interpretation on what's going on. And, you know, the standard kind of perception of astrology is that the planets, the stars, the moon and the sun are reflectors in some way of what's going on Earth and what's happening in our own lives. I personally do see it differently. I think that there is a relationship going on, and I do think that, you know, the stars and the planets are way bigger than any of us, and I think that they do have an influence on us personally, but I think that the scope of that influence is, you know, it's a spectrum, and that's why the significance of ancient interpretations of the planets and the stars and of astrology in general is so interesting, because the scope of what's possible when a particular planet is interacting with another planet is so wide, and so many things could potentially happen, that it's fascinating for me to watch how that's actually playing out in the world. If you have been tuning into my celestial weather updates so far, I think that you probably have an idea that my approach is not only really focused on personal transformation and personal healing and a conscious evolution, shall we say. That's what I'm interested in personally, but I'm also a political animal. You know, I'm very interested in the dynamics of power in the world that we're living in now, and, you know, in this idea that we are actually evolving towards something which is hopefully higher and fairer and more fitting to the scope of our potential as human beings. You know, it's a famous idea that we've only ever used a fraction of our brain's potentials. And I do really believe that things are improving. I think that, you know, factually, statistically, there is evidence of that over the last 50 years, the last 100 years, the last 200 years, the last 500 years, we have come forward in leaps and bounds in terms of the rights of the average person, in terms of the growth in average wealth, in all kinds of indicators. You know, we are definitely moving forward. We have a long way to go. There is a lot to do, and that's also why I find the astrology so interesting. For a long time, I felt desperately depressed about where we were going, but I definitely have a much more positive take on things, which I need to remind myself about it from time to time, and 2021 is one of those times. So my kind of overview of this week's weather kind of taps into that, because I keep having these conversations with people where we're talking about this experience that many of us are having here in Australia, where we really did experience, you know, the impact of COVID last year in a much milder way than many other places. Even though here in Nam we had, you know, the full lockdown compared to anywhere else in Australia, still we were very fortunate. And for many of us who are maybe introverted a little bit, or creative, or a bit more at peace in our own company, that lockdown was, you know, challenging in some ways, but not so difficult. For other people, it was incredibly difficult. For those who found it not so difficult last year, 2021 feels a lot more challenging. And that's because I think we kind of dreamed up some new possibilities and set some new things in motion, and now we have to act on them. And it is quite terrifying. And that is really reflected in the Saturn Uranus square, which is lasting all year. We are still under the influence of that square, although we had the exact square, you know, a couple of weeks ago. They're still 1 degree apart. That's a very close square. And that is, of course, the pull between the old way and the kind of, you know, the feeling of restriction and limitation, and the difficulty of the work of trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve. And then Uranus wanting to move forward, wanting to innovate, wanting to change things up and be more creative and be more free. This tension between those two dynamics means that, you know, things can be really frustrating and challenging, and as we're learning these new processes and these new kind of pathways, new skills that are leading us down these pathways, we're not so great at what we're doing yet. And that can be challenging in and of itself. And if we have a tendency towards critical, inner narratives and inner dialogues, that can be something that really needs to be addressed now. We need to give ourselves a little bit of slack, because we are learning new ways of doing things. We are building a new possibility for engaging, for creating, and we just have to realize that we're not going to be that great at it yet. We're still a while away from really having any kind of basic mastery over what we're doing. So that's the general picture. This week's astrology is really interesting. We've moved into Pisces season, and I have my fingers crossed that, as many other astrologers are saying, that Pisces should give us a little bit more calm and a little bit more quiet and some time to rest. I really hope so, because this year so far has been relentless. But Pisces season does bring us some really beautiful energy. And this week is really interesting because as of today, Friday, we have a couple of really interesting things going on. We have Mars moving into 0 degrees of Gemini. So, I never realized that it was such a big deal when planets kind of ingress, move into a new sign. But of course, they take on a whole range of characteristics, because wherever the planet sits, whichever house and whichever sign a planet is sitting in, they're kind of following the rules of the owner of that house, so to speak, just as would be the case in the real world. If you're a guest in someone's house, you kind of follow their lead, and you live in harmony with their way of doing things. When you're in your own house, you have a lot of power. You can do what you like. You feel comfortable and happy in your own home. So Mars is not in his home in Gemini, but he is just moving out of Taurus, where he's been since January. And in Taurus, he's considered to be in his fall, because it's the house opposite his house. It's actually the house of his lover, Venus. So it's not that bad, but he really has to modify his behavior, and he has to follow Venus. Venus is the boss of Taurus, and Venus is answering to Saturn. So there have been restrictions on Mars's ability to, act. As he moves into Gemini, Gemini is a much faster, lighter sign, and Mars is fast and, and impulsive. So he's kind of a little bit more dynamic. So that also should give us hopefully a little bit more energy for the next couple of months. But the other really amazing thing that's happening, and it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out in mundane astrology, i.e. in the world and in our own lives, because the exact moment that Mars enters Gemini, the boss of Gemini, who is Mercury rules Gemini, comes into an exact conjunction with Jupiter, the Greater Benefic, i.e. the luckiest planet in our solar system. They're both in Aquarius. So this is really, another really auspicious event in astrology. And they just keep seeming to be these recurring, powerful, synchronistic alignments as various astrological aspects are happening. Something really powerful is happening elsewhere, which is not making, the challenges of our lives, it's not diminishing them to an enormous extent, but it is really reminding me constantly that we are on the path, and the cosmos wants us to move forward as much as we do ourselves. And so it is challenging, and the challenge is not going to lessen completely, but it's so important to remember that there is auspicious power, there is auspicious help. We are being really aided by these kind of benefic influences. So what does it mean that Mercury and Jupiter are conjunct? Mercury is the mind, it's ideas, it's communication, it's business, it's fast, light thinking, swift, clever, even trickstery energy at times. It's really mutable. Gemini is also a mutable sign, so it's really able to change very quickly. And Mercury is like, it's the most mutable of all the planets. It really doesn't sit in a fixed place. It moves so quickly. And it is the planet closest to the sun, moves the fastest around our solar system. And the one that we feel most intensely, for example, when it retrogrades, everybody feels it. So Mercury meeting Jupiter. Jupiter is the Greater Benefic. It's the planet of expansion, good fortune. You know, it's in mythology it was Zeus or Jupiter in the Roman tradition, the god, or the king of the gods, so to speak, who was a very positive outlook. So when these two meet, there's this sense that there is a growing possibility for ideas and communication to expand in really positive ways, for our ability to communicate to be really accentuated. It's not working for me yet, obviously. Hopefully tomorrow there'll be a noticeable difference. But yes, this expansion in communication potential, the potential to be hearing really amazing good news in our own lives. And this kind of also leads me into the mundane astrology, what's going on in the world. As I mentioned, you know, I obviously have quite a political outlook. If you're not interested in progressive politics, then you are not going to dig these views. So, you know, that's totally cool. But if you are interested in seeing how it might be playing out in the context of the astrology, you know, I personally find it super, super interesting. And as usual, you know, we're not being disappointed week by week since 2020 with the big news that's going on. The world is changing in dramatic ways. So the other thing that's happening is we may see some really big and very positive news that is signaling some kind of advance relating to justice for the people around the time of this conjunction. Especially as Mars moves into Gemini, and Mars is also about taking action. Mars rules desire, motivation, ambition, an aggressive kind of action. But with Jupiter and Mercury in Aquarius, it's for the good of the whole, of the people, for change, positive change, building a new world in a very positive way that has strong philosophical and factual roots, because Mercury rules data, facts. It's not about beliefs. Jupiter rules beliefs. So it's this interesting merging of the facts meeting the beliefs. So some revelation in information that helps to kind of dispel some of the fake news potentially. We have also been seeing, well, certainly in Australia, the news has been very, very interesting, and I've been reading it through the lens of Venus and Neptune conjunct the Sun in Pisces. So as I mentioned last week, the Sun is kind of like, you know, the ruler of our solar system. And at the moment it's moving through Pisces, the most spiritual sign, the sign where we kind of transmute our karma, where we are able to unify the fractured parts of our experience, this ability to find harmony between differences. The Sun is moving through, and Venus and Neptune are on either side of the Sun. And they are, you know, the lower and higher octaves of the same thing. Venus is interpersonal love, and Neptune is higher conscious love, cosmic love. And they are in the most spiritual sign. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and Neptune rules Pisces, and the Sun is the lord of the solar system. So they're like really the attendants of the king. The Sun, whenever planets are very, very close to the Sun, they're referred to as being combust, because the Sun is so powerful that if a planet comes too close to the Sun, it burns it up. It becomes invisible in the sky because the Sun is so bright. And, you know, it's understood in ancient astrology that the planet loses its power. It can't do what it would normally be able to do because the Sun is so intense. The upside of that is that the planet has to withdraw into itself, or the expression of that planet's energies in our lives personally has to, or in the world, kind of has to turn inwards and focus on some kind of more spiritual burning off of the lower expression of its energies. So it's a very spiritual kind of aspect, that conjunction with the Sun. However, when a planet is exalted, as Venus is exalted in Pisces at the moment, and she's combust the Sun, she is not as detrimentally affected by that combustion as would normally be the case. She's exalted, so she's riding in the chariot of the Sun, but there's still some intensity there. And I mean, I have been really paying attention to the news here in Australia. It's, you know, relentless revelations and the crisis in the government relating to the revelations of information regarding sexual assault by politicians, by our Attorney General. Of course, alleged assault. 4 women have come forward to accuse the man who allegedly raped. These revelations are forcing the government to take some responsibility. Not yet, of course. We are seeing this play out between the Saturn, the government refusing to actually act, wanting to retain the structures of power as they exist, which are male patriarchal power, not having to take real responsibility for the devastating destructiveness of these patterns of behaviour that allow women to be, and not just women, but definitely women are a major target of these kinds of aggressions and criminal acts of behaviour that are related to sexual power dynamics. But we are seeing that there is no backing away at this point. And to me, that really does relate to this Venus being exalted in Pisces. The 2 different perceptions of what's going on here. But Venus is relentless, and the Sun has her back. The Sun is supporting Venus, and the Sun is conscious awareness, shining conscious light on what's going on. So we're really seeing these issues of sexual justice and of discrimination against women, and the boys' club standing up and protecting their own, which is continuing. Saturn, that's continuing, and Uranus is kind of struggling to break that down so there's more freedom and liberation for all. So it will be interesting to see how that continues to play out. I've also found it interesting looking at the politics in the United States in relation to some of these issues, because Venus also rules money and she rules justice and fairness. So I am hoping that we see some more news about big justice measures in relation to the dynamics taking place here in Australia with regard to gender equality and justice. But in the States, it's really interesting because what we're seeing a lot is relating to breakthroughs around justice relating to money and finances. We've seen Neera Tanden be rejected. She stepped down from the position of the Office of Budget Management. I've forgotten the exact title, it'll be in my notes. Because she was not going to be able to win. She was not going to get the number of votes that would require her nomination to be accepted, which is fantastic news for anyone who's interested in justice, because although she was the head of the Centre for American Progress, that was progress in name only, because she was really bought by the corporate powers and really worked against the idea of greater economic equality for ordinary people. So it's fantastic news that she has stepped down. And Bernie Sanders, who is the head of the social justice movement in politics, has indicated that he is going to push forward for a vote on the raise in the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is, again, fantastic news. This kind of Venus being exalted in Pisces and the Sun illuminating and supporting that charge towards a higher consciousness and a fairer approach to the use of resources for all. So that's fantastic news as well. I'm really excited by that. So for over the weekend and into next week, this week we've been experiencing the moon, the lonely moon. She's been all by herself over one side of the zodiac with the weight of planets over on the other side. And you may have also been feeling the impact of that, feeling more emotional, feeling lonelier, feeling the heart kind of tugging a little bit. I've certainly felt that this week very strongly. And that's going to continue for a few more days. On Sunday, the moon is going to be back in Capricorn, and that's where Pluto is. The moon has a tough time in Capricorn because, Capricorn does find expressing emotions more difficult. But Capricorn loves a project. So if you feel the intensity of the emotions on Sunday, especially as she approaches Pluto, the planet of transformation, destruction and regeneration, and also deep wounds and deep traumas that provide us the material with which to transform. Finding some kind of project to channel your energies will be very, very helpful. You know, there's this possibility that something powerful could be activated at an emotional level that allows us to really level up. You know, Capricorn is really about what we are striving towards, building towards what we're striving towards. So any challenging emotions that do come in the context of work or family or relationships or whatever will be transformative and short-lived, because the moon moves very, very quickly. Pluto is also trining Mars, a beautiful trine. It's a little bit loose, but it is giving power and energy and dynamism to this process of transformation, which is very much about ideas and communication. You know, Mars is in Gemini now, and Gemini rules communication. Also relationships with, you know, neighbours, siblings, colleagues, technology. Hopefully we won't be experiencing too many technological breakdowns. My computer died last week. The moon's nodes are being squared by the sun this week. So again, the moon is the illuminator, it's our conscious awareness, and so it is really shining light on our karma and on our destiny. Where are we going? It's squaring almost exactly on Saturday. We're getting a glimpse of what still needs to be done and how far we've actually come. Gemini is the north node, and it is really still pressing us to consider, what are the facts here? What are what's the data? Where is the information? What is it pointing to? And do our beliefs about what's going on actually align with the facts? So that process is still underway, and with the sun squaring the moon's nodes, that can, I mean, squares are tense aspects that force us to take action. So it'll be interesting to see what how that unfolds and how it plays out over the next few days. As always, I'm hoping to see the continuing unfolding of the march towards justice. They are not going to be realised this year entirely. We are seeing, though, enormous progress. Biden, I think, is a very, very interesting symbol of the clash between Uranus and Saturn. You know, he is demonstrating the intensity of both sides. You know, on one hand, you know, he started passing all these laws that were so forward thinking, so progressive, you know, refusing to sell arms to Saudi Arabia for the war on Yemen, and then bombing Syria like a week later against international law. This is, you know, so symbolic of the Saturn-Uranus square. And this year, of course, Saturn is way more powerful than Uranus. Uranus is still powerful, but Saturn has the upper hand all year. We are seeing this progress, but it's not going to be total. It's going to be constantly tempered by these Saturnian qualities that want to retain the old forms and the old structures of power, but they are not going to last. They are crumbling out. We're seeing them crumble all around us. And soon Saturn will not reign the most powerful in the skies. There's a reason that Saturn has so much power now, and why we're being forced to reckon with Saturn, because Saturn forces us to do the work that's necessary in order to mature, in order to gain mastery. So for all of the frustrations that we might be experiencing in our lives right now, personally and collectively, in terms of the blocks and the walls that we're coming up against, that is really teaching us to gain mastery over our own skills and abilities and resources, and learning how to apply those kind of, you know, those tempered skills and level up, you know, and we're leveling up through restrictions and challenges, because that is how that happens. No fun, but very, very productive in the long run. Of course, Saturn is the long run. But Uranus is instantaneous, and I think it is very positive to maintain an eye out for the positive changes that are underway at the moment too, because they are pushing us forward as well. Both of those forces, you know, they are doing opposite things, and yet they both rule the same forward-thinking sign. And they are in combination, they're creating this tension that is forcing us to grow into the possibilities that we dream of for the future. But they are not easy. And that is, you know, we are wanting to move into something that is radically good and different and evolved. And that is not an easy path, but we are getting there. And I hope if you have also been feeling some of the challenge of this time and, you know, some of that, the moon's influence, you know, she's been in Scorpio the last couple of days, which is, you know, intense, super intense and really deep feeling, emotional, and can bring up pain and trauma. You know, she moves into Sagittarius now, so she's a little bit more optimistic. But, you know, if you do feel down about what's possible, you know, doubting that you can achieve what you dream most of achieving, or that the world is going down the gurgler, it is changing. It's changing fast, not as fast as perhaps we would like. But I hope you can maintain some faith and some hope. You know, as the moon leads us through this cycle, she will buoy us up again, and she will challenge us again, as will all the planets. But they are challenging us to be our best. And we can totally do that. We are doing that. I so admire all of you who are doing so many amazing things. Keep it up. You know, we are making the world. Governments have power, but we are going to be continuing to gain more power, the people, in terms of creating the world we want to create. So hang in there, stay strong. It is challenging. Yeah, I'm sending you all so much love and strength and solidarity and gratitude for all that you're doing. I will see you next week for the amazing new moon update. Oh, it's going to be a beautiful one. So exciting. All right. Big love to you all.